Before we get into the webinar proper, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet. And for those of us located in Brisbane, this is the land of the Yuggera and the Turrbal people. And I'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. This is a moderated session, so please utilise the chat function or the Q&A function, sorry, to register and ask any questions that you may have. We've got a great lineup of speakers today. First of all, I'm going to give a little bit of background about drought reform and how we've actually got to where we are today. Then Dave McRae is going to give us an overview of the current drought status and a little bit of information on the seasonal forecast moving ahead. I will then take over from Dave and I'll talk a little bit about the policy behind drought reform and help set the scene for Cherie Finney and Jeff Bainish, who will talk a little bit later as well on the program and the different types of assistance that will be available through the new package. So after I've talked about the policy intent and the background, Jeff, as I said, Jeff Bainish is going to talk about the Farm Business Resilience Plan. And then he'll also talk about the Farm Business Resilience Program. Hopefully he won't use too many acronyms and confuse people. Then Cherie Finney from QRider will talk to us about the new drought assistance measures that are available through QRider. Then Mark Collins from AgForce has kindly agreed to join us, and we'll just do a bit of a quick wrap up. Mark will talk about the importance of drought reform for the extensive grazing sector, and then we'll actually take some time, hopefully 30 or 40 minutes, to actually run through some of your questions. And the intent is here that the panel will look at the questions that you pose to us, and we will provide responses. Okay, moving into to drought reform. The purpose of today's webinar is to outline how people can apply for the new Queensland drought assistance measures. A number of you probably saw that an announcement was made by Minister Furner, I think at the AgForce conference last week. That was to talk about some of the grant assistance that is available, and there have been some previous announcements around the packages earlier on. The drought program review that Charles Burke and Ruth Wade undertook in 2018 really sets the scene for the measures that are being implemented in terms of drought reform moving forward. Ruth and Charles, I believe from memory, had a series of 9 meetings in regional Queensland to talk to producers about what they wanted from a new drought relief assistance package. The big thing, I guess, in parallel with the announcements that have been made is that the current drought assistance that's available, particularly through the Drought Relief Assistance Scheme and a number of other measures that we'll talk about a little bit more, will continue to be offered for the period of the current drought. Queensland is implementing the new drought assistance through QRider, and Cherie Finney, as I said, will actually talk in a lot more detail about that. And Cherie will actually give a couple of examples or case studies around applications that have been received by QRider to help set the scene, I guess, for some of your questions that you may have on successful and unsuccessful applications that have been received. An important facet, I guess, of the new drought reform measures that assistance has actually been expanded outside of the grazing sector to now include primary producers from a broader range of industries. And that drought assistance is actually focused on drought preparedness and building self-reliance in managing for drought. Producers will no longer need a drought declaration to access drought preparedness assistance. as I mentioned previously, to access financial assistance, producers will need to develop a farm business resilience plan, and Jeff Bainish will take us through that. So that's a bit of how we've got to where we are today. I'd now like to hand over to Dave McRae. Dave has, and to introduce Dave while he's getting his presentation up, Dave has an extensive work history with the Department in Climate Science and working with producers to manage their climate risks. Over the last few years as the State Climate Risk Coordinator, he's been involved in the drought declaration process, as well as the assessment of drought relief assistance applications. Dave's a little bit, he's showing off here a little bit, but he's very much enjoying the change in season and the green grass that he has available at home, and that I know is not representative of a lot of areas of the state, but it certainly is here in southern and southeastern Queensland. So Dave, thank you very much for participating today, mate. Over to you.
Thanks, Ted. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to participate. First of all, I just thought I'd cover off on where we are at the minute with Queensland's drought declaration status. The map that you have a look at the minute is the current drought status for Queensland. It's 64.7% of the land area is declared. That includes 34 fully declared local government areas, 3 part declared local government areas, which is the Flinders, Isaac and Whitsunday, and there's another 25 individually droughted properties in a further 7 local government areas. All this information and maps freely available on the Long Paddock website, links here at the bottom of the page. I'm happy for the PDF to be sent around so people can go and have a look at this information themselves. In terms of the review time for drought, we're coming into that now over the next month. Local drought committees meet. They sit down, have a discussion about rainfall, pasture growth, water, livestock condition, drought feeding or drought movements that may be going on in their area. They make a recommendation to the department and the minister as to the drought status for the next 6, 9, 12 months for their sort of region. So if there's going to be some changes, that will be occurring over the next month or so. In terms of, and Ted mentioned it before, one of the outcomes or outputs from the drought review undertaken in 18-19 was a decision by the government to invest in getting a more tailored or scientific approach to assessing drought conditions across the state. So this isn't just taking rainfall. In terms of that, the government's developed this product called Australian Combined Drought Indicator, and it uses a combination of rainfall, soil moisture, evapotranspiration, and a satellite imagery of greenness to produce a tailored drought indicator for Northern Australia especially. I often think of it more than just a drought indicator. I think of it as a way of looking for opportunities, way to look for areas that are doing well, etc. like that as well. So I suppose it comes down to the interpretation. If people are after more information on it, they go to the website there or just Google CDI climate. It'll take you there as well. And you can play around with these maps. You can look at them on scales of 1, 3, 6, 9, 12, 24, 36, 48 months, etc. like that. And at a variety of scales. There's a downscaled area for southeast Queensland, Queensland as a whole, and Australia as a whole. There's also a few different interpretations of the definition of drought. So it's, it's quite a good tool to go in and have a look at. With the wind down in DRAS as places, as either areas be revoked from drought or as producers self-nominate to revoke themselves from drought so they can get access to the new scheme, I just thought I'd cover off that the state government and federal government are still providing assistance or ongoing drought assistance for primary producers. This is just a short summary of those. A big one, especially for Queensland, or especially for eastern parts of Queensland, is the electricity rebate for irrigators. There's also land rent rebates, water licence waivers, etc. like that from different departments in Queensland. So if you need more information on that, if you go to the Business Queensland website, it does provide quite an extensive list on those. Interestingly, while under the new scheme, you don't actually need a drought declaration to get access to the drought preparedness schemes, etc. like this, for a number of these, such as DREX, you will still need a drought declaration process moving forward. And to finish off, I just thought I'd highlight the Bureau's current seasonal outlook for April, May, June. I know some people may be more or not quite as excited as what I am to see the current outlook. It's still quite positive. Most of the state has a 60% plus chance of getting above median rainfall through to the end of June. It'd be nice to see that occur, especially for the drier parts of central Queensland, where, you know, the large areas of the state have missed out, but it would be a good finish to our summer season and start to the autumn winter season if we did get that type of scenario as we move forward. Thank you, Ted.
Good on you, Dave. Thank you very much for that. So I haven't seen any questions come up yet, people, but as I've said, for those of you that have joined late, please post any questions that you have in the Q&A function, and then during the panel session at the end, we would like to cover off on those questions and give you responses. Okay. As I've introduced Dave, I forgot to introduce myself, everyone. So Ted Parrish, I've been with the department now for nearly 30 years. I started my career in the department as a stock inspector. I've spent a fair bit of time up in the Gulf in the BTEC campaign. In the late 90s and early 2000s, I came down to Brisbane and I worked in the drought and risk management areas within the department. I also spent a bit of time later on working within Queensland Treasury on water reform, and spent a bit of time in the Department of Premier and Cabinet as a rural advisor there. Grew up on a property down near Willow Tree at the bottom of the Liverpool Plains, and have been involved with agriculture probably nearly all my life. Okay. Just quickly now, before we move into the next session with Jeff, as Dave mentioned, while the drought continues, the Queensland Government will still support producers through the Drought Relief Assistance Scheme. But DRAS, once the drought declarations are lifted, Queensland will fall into line with other jurisdictions, and DRAS will not be available for future droughts. Dave's touched on the other forms of drought assistance that are currently available, such as the land rent rebates and water licence waivers, so I don't need to go back over those. Drought declared producers can choose to continue accessing DRAS, or they can transition to the new measures. There's a little bit of a caveat on that though, in that if producers elect to opt out of DRAS, if that's the right word to use, they must wait a minimum period of 6 months from the last application that they lodge with DRAS before they can apply for assistance through QRider. The emergency water infrastructure rebate, which has been hugely popular, will continue to be available under DRAS. However, it should be noted that similar projects would be available for assistance under the new drought preparedness grants, and Cherie will talk about that during her presentation. So Emma's kindly popped up that slide, which basically encapsulates just what I've talked about. Thank you, Em. So I'd now like to hand over to Jeff Bainish. Jeff's going to talk to us about the Farm Business Resilience Plan and the program. So Jeff commenced in the role of Program Manager for the Farm Business Resilience Program within DAF's Drought Policy and Response Team in January 2022. Prior to this, Jeff was the Facility Manager of the ex-Queensland Agricultural Training College assets in Emerald. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you very much, mate, for joining us today.
Thanks for that introduction, Ted, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's a pleasure. So, in terms of the new drought reform, development of a farm business resilience plan is a key component, pushing the emphasis towards being proactively prepared for drought rather than reactive. So, to apply for the new Queensland Drought Assistance, the primary producer will need to develop a farm business resilience plan. So a farm business resilience plan identifies goals and assesses strategies and plans to manage risks, including drought. The farm business resilience plan should be evidence-based and incorporate relevant learnings from training and be tailored to the purpose of the business operation. It should outline how actions will be implemented, monitored and reviewed. So very briefly, in terms of the content that's required in a farm business resilience plan, there's a number of themes. Theme 1's about our business, so that just provides some descriptive information about the business. Theme 2 is the motivation, so that's specific to each individual business. Theme 3 is the goals. So once again, we recognise that each individual business is going to have different goals, but we want you to put them down to put forward a plan to meeting those goals. Theme 4 is an important one. It's about managing risks. So it's a holistic assessment of all the risks that are impacting the business. Theme 5 is how we manage dry conditions and drought. So that's a critical one in terms of putting forward and developing projects that might be eligible for the new drought assistance packages that Cherie will be talking about later. Theme 6, once again, the actions and implementation plans to improve, and then reviewing the plan. So there are a number of ways in which producers can develop a farm business resilience plan. We acknowledge that some people might have an existing business resilience plan or a more comprehensive business plan. So there's no requirement to use this template. However, it's important that whatever you have meets at least the minimum requirements that are in this business plan or farm business resilience plan template. You could seek assistance from the Farm Business Resilience Program, which I'll be talking about in a minute. You could seek the assistance of a consultant. So Cherie will be talking about the farm management grants that are available through QRider. So they can be used to help to develop a farm business resilience plan. And they may also be used in association with the Farm Business Resilience Program. So the two aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Or you could do it yourself independently using some of the tools that are available. So in terms of the resources that are available to develop a farm business resilience plan, once again, you could access support through the Farm Business Resilience Program. There are self-assessment checklists and Farm Business Resilience Plan templates, fact sheets and videos, and other explanatory material, all available on the DAF website. So that's the Farm Business Resilience Plan in a quick overview. Now we move on to the Farm Business Resilience Program. So the Farm Business Resilience Program is a new 4-year program focusing on building the capacity of Queensland producers to prepare for and manage business and climate risks. The Farm Business Resilience Program is co-funded through the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund and the Queensland Government's Drought and Climate Adaptation Program. So the program provides or aims to provide capacity building activities and extension to agricultural producers across Queensland, across the broad key learning areas of strategic farm business management and planning activities, risk management and informed decision making, natural resource management, personal and social resilience. So the Farm Business Resilience Program itself ticks off on the triple bottom line. So the Farm Business Program consists of 6 main projects, 3 DAF-led and 3 led by industry. So the Grazing Futures Livestock Business Resilience Program is managed by Joe Rolfe, and it's providing training and capacity developing opportunities for extensive livestock businesses, improving farm business resilience in Queensland's grain farming systems is another DAF run project, and that's managed by Rod Collins. Dairy Farm Business Resilience Program, another DAF one managed by Mark Bauer. And then there are 3 industry-led programs. So the Family Farm Enterprise Risk and Resilience Program is managed by the Queensland Farmers Federation. Business Resilience for Cane Growers is managed by cane growers, obviously, and Chris Gillett is the project manager of that one. Resilience Planning for Horticulture is managed by GrowCom, and the GrowCom project leader is Karen George. Incidentally, I think I forgot to mention, Kerry Battersby is the manager of the QFF Family Farm Enterprise Risk and Resilience Program. So under that one, there's a number of sub-programs that are being rolled out by member organisations. Important to note, given that the topic of this is the extensive grazing industry, is that Grazing Futures Livestock Business Resilience have also partnered with the two financial counselling organisations, Rapid and Rural Financial Counselling Solutions Southern Queensland, to create, together with a number of natural resource management groups, to create a whole of business experience and support for primary producers in that industry. So the program delivery varies a fair bit depending on the individual project. We haven't been prescriptive. We've allowed each of the project managers specifically to design and develop delivery strategies that are most appropriate for their industry. So we see that as one of the key strengths of the program. So they're using a range of delivery strategies, but you may be pleased to know that there's a heavy emphasis on face-to-face delivery, but we're not excluding online delivery. So in terms of the overall framework, irrespective of the program, the delivery follows a similar key logic. So it basically begins with a situational risk analysis, looking at where the business is at the moment in relation to each of the key areas. So incorporating land and resource management, marketing, climate management, production management, physical and infrastructure. So it's a holistic assessment of the business as it is, and it might involve some export input in relation to each of those key areas, and looking at best management practices in relation to each of those areas. Following that, an identification of strengths and weaknesses, and once again there could be some expert input associated with this. Leading to the development of a business resilience plan, which enables people to develop strategies to manage risk in each of the key areas. And some of those strategies may also result in being eligible for support under the package that Cherie's going to talk about later, that's administered through QRider. And we're acknowledging that this is an ongoing process. So the Farm Business Resilience Program is going to last for the next 4 years. So we're envisaging that there'll be a cycle. So people will go through this cycle a number of times over the next 4 years. So essentially, we look forward to the opportunity to work with you to enhance the environmental, economic and social resilience of your business. So more information can be obtained from the DAF Drought Assistance website or through calling the DAF call centre or emailing DAF. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And I'm really excited, together with the project managers, we're excited to have the opportunity to work with you to deliver holistic capacity building activities that are tailored to the context of individual businesses. So I think it's a great opportunity and we look forward to working with you. Thanks, Ted.
Good on you, Jeff. Thank you very much. We've got a few questions starting to roll in now, which is great. Couple of key things for me, I guess, out of Jeff's presentation is one that really this is early days in terms of drought reform, and it's a work in progress. So there'll be a lot of monitoring, be a lot of reviewing of the program and its effectiveness, and we could well obviously see some changes as things unfold over the next few years. Another important take home for me is that there's a range of support out there for people to develop a farm business resilience plan, and whether or not you want to embrace and embark on that journey yourselves and draw on expertise from within DAF or other organisations, or pay someone to assist you to develop a plan. There's a range of options there, and I guess in terms of a plan, and we can talk about this a little bit more in the Q&A session, there's the ability in my mind, I think, to be able to utilise the plan and scope it out and develop it to a whole new level that may enable you to be able to approach a financial institution at some point, to be able to, if you're looking for, for finance for a whole range of, different applications, and presenting a farm business resilience plan to, your bank manager will, I believe, stand you in very, very good stead. Okay, thanks again, Jeff. I'd like to now introduce Cherie Finney from QRider. Cherie is the manager for natural disasters and drought. So she's a very, very busy lady at the moment, and we've been involved in a number of meetings and presentations together. Cherie's been, in recent times, Cherie's been with QRider since April 2019, and prior to her QRider life, she was agribusiness credit analyst with a commercial bank, and prior to that, a program manager for Good Shepherd Microfinance, which administered and delivered microfinance and financial inclusion to disadvantaged people. She's an animal nut, which is great. She loves dogs and otters, and even a bit of scuba diving, and she's passionate about helping people. So welcome, Cherie. Look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to share my screen with you all, and I'm going to run through my little bit of a presentation. So I hope everyone can see that. So QRider's drought support. Who are we? So we are the specialist provider of government financial assistance. We have loans, grants and rebates, and on your screen there is a whole heap of things that we do. You're probably all familiar with a couple of them, particularly disaster recovery and first start loans and sustainability loans. But we also have a few other programs there. Farm debt services, which is a really important arm of the business. The rural economic development grants, a whole heap of different things. But today we're going to be talking about the drought measures. So let's start at the beginning. The farm management grant that Jeff and Ted have both touched on really quickly there. The farm management grant offers primary production 50% rebate on the cost of eligible professional advice up to a maximum of $2,500 to advise people and farm businesses on how to produce a farm business resilience plan. I think that's something really important that I'd really like to reiterate about our farm management grants is that it's not limited to one set of advice. It is a total of $2,500 as a total, but you're not limited to just going to one person for that advice. And it's not also limited to only drought. The Farm Business Resilience Plan is the keystone to this entire program, and getting that right, getting it comprehensive and having a holistic approach to that Farm Business Resilience Plan is really important. So going to see professionals and consultants from a range of different fields within that is what this is encouraging you to do. Go get the advice. There's a brief little rundown there on what it can help producers to do. Recognise risks associated with the production, climate change, weather, such as drought. Identify business risks, including financial, market factors, and how to respond to those risks, and undertake personal risks, such as workplace health and safety. So that can include, talking to somebody about your employees and attracting labour to your farm. It can be an agronomist, it can be your accountant, it can be talking to somebody about not just drought measures, but of course drought measures are very important. Now, with the eligibility of the farm management grant, a primary producer, as defined in the guidelines, and as these ones are, it's a business that derives more than 50% of its total income and spends more than 50% of their total labour on farm. You have to have paid for the eligible professional advice and received that since the 11th of November 2021, which is when the program opened. And then the advice from the suitably qualified advisor cannot be the applicant and cannot have a conflict of interest with that applicant and cannot be employed or own or partially owned part of the business. Now onto the Drought Preparedness Grant. So these ones are what have been open for a few months now, and I will discuss a little bit later on, go through a little bit of a sort of a case study on a couple of things, but that's a little bit later on. But the Drought Preparedness Grant is a $50,000 co-contribution grant to assist primary producers for on-farm capital improvements that will improve the drought preparedness of their property. So it has to be in correlation to an activity that's been identified in the Farm Business Resilience Plan. As I said, that the FBRP is keystone into all of these programs. It does have to be permanent infrastructure or permanent capital there, but it can include, water infrastructure, equipment that improves the ability of the business to manage the drought, and of course any contractor or any freight that has to do with the installation and delivery of that particular infrastructure. So we do obviously have our sustainability loans, and that can be used as a co-contribution, somebody's own funds that they have, going to a financial institution to get the co-contribution. That can be all part of that co-contribution as well. So eligibility. So obviously, again, has to demonstrate that at least one person in the primary production meets that definition of primary producer, as I mentioned before. They do have to demonstrate an ability to provide the main contribution, which is, the loan or overdraft or their own funds, whatever they have. They do have to have the necessary approvals, so you can't just dig a dam without somebody knowing about it or erect a shed without the correct approvals. And you must present a farm business resilience plan, and it has to be a satisfactory one. What they can't have done is have DRAS funding within the last 6 months of the application. That includes the FRET subsidy or the emergency water infrastructure rebate or any of that other DRAS funding. And then previously received a drought preparedness grant for the exact same project or activity. Onto the loans. We do have 3 loans as part of this scheme, and if I start on this one, this is the Drought Carry-On Finance Loan. So it's up to $250,000 to help primary producers that have been significantly affected by drought. And this is for carry-on finance assistance or working capital. So it can be used for things like, rates or lease payments or paying creditors, buying goods, fuel, and wages, things like that, that can be put forward, just essential working capital kind of expenses. To be eligible, they have to demonstrate once again that somebody in the business is a primary producer. They have to have carried on primary production business for at least 12 months to be eligible for this particular loan. They have to have taken reasonable precautions to minimise the effect of drought, and they have to be able to service that loan, pay it back. They have to demonstrate that financial assistance is required because the primary production enterprise has been significantly financially affected by drought, which goes without saying, it shouldn't be difficult to do. And demonstrate the primary production business cannot support carry-on from existing cash and other liquid resources. So anything that's existing from any kind of commercial financial, overdraft limits or FMDs, they all do need to be utilised prior to this. And they do need to present a farm business resilience plan, but as this is more of a drought measure, we understand that that might not go in with the application, but it does need to be a satisfactory plan presented to us within a reasonable time period of that application. The Drought Ready and Recovery Finance Loan. This one is a little bit different from that one. This one is potentially what people might use as their co-contribution for the Drought Preparedness Grant. So again, the eligibility is, of course, has to have somebody that would meet the definition of a primary production, and it has to be around the project and activity identified in a farm business resilience plan. So for this particular loan, you have to present a reasonable, satisfactory farm business resilience plan with the application. We obviously prospects for viability. You have to be able to service that loan and demonstrate that drought recovery finance. It just, you know, that what you're doing will have an approved drought resilience and restocking or to enable your business to continue. And the other drought loan that we have is the Emergency Drought Assistance Loan. This one is only for $50,000, but this is also for any of that working capital expenses. The difference between this one, all the others are potentially over a 10-year period. They are concessional loan rates, so concessional interest rates, whereas this one here is a much smaller one, significantly. It's only $50,000, but it is completely interest-free. There are no fees and no charges involved in this one whatsoever, and the first 2 years is a loan repayment holiday. So it's obviously for people that are significantly affected within the drought, so they can have their carry-on finance or essential working capital assistance. Once again, through this, it's very, very similar to the carry-on finance. They have to demonstrate that they can service the loan. Obviously, with a much smaller amount, the security for that would be a lot more, you know, I guess, easy to achieve. But the Farm Business Resilience Plan, once again, because we understand that you're in drought and it's an emergency situation, you don't have to have it at application, but it does need to be satisfactory within a reasonable time frame after application to us. So this is where you find help for all of the above and sundry. You go onto our webpage, qwriter.qld.gov.au, and in the your region section, you can pop the postcode in there, and then the contact for your regional area manager will come up. There are 11 regional managers across the entire state, so there's somebody for every area, and a lot of them obviously being regional, and within those areas are specialists in certain industries as well. The important message to get out there is to don't ever self-assess regarding the eligibility. If you've got questions, just call, either look that regional area manager up or give us a call on 1-800-623-946, or give us an email and we can forward you straight through to the regional area manager, or one of our kind staff on that line will give you a call. So that's me. I'm going to stop sharing right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a quick chat about something that sort of like a case study, I guess. But what I wanted to do first is really have a chat about that, the Drought Resilience, or the Drought Preparedness Grant, rather. So it's been open for a few months, and I thought that it would be best, some learnings to share would be, I guess, for want of a better term, is decline reasons, the ones that we're consistently seeing. So as I've mentioned, and everybody else has mentioned, the most important part of this entire program really is that Farm Business Resilience Plan, and people popping in for the Drought Preparedness Grant, with the FBRP, popping it in and it not being accepted, not complete, or written prescriptively. So they're obviously doing the Farm Business Resilience Plan just in order to get the drought, whereas, you know, the whole idea of the holistic approach to getting that Farm Business Resilience Plan isn't just about getting a grant or getting a loan. It's about being drought resilient and having your businesses resilient. Things that would be also, having it not complete, because even though we do focus on the sections that are drought specific, of course it does need to be a complete plan to put it forward. Having it inadequate, so things that are in there that aren't measurable, specific or timely, because that's really important. Another part that I've seen in the decline reasons would be that financials are not being provided, or along there is a checklist on all of those loans or all of those grants about the things that you do need to you're required to put forward, and those not being attached. Another one that is the purchases have already been made. When you put in your application for a grant, the work cannot have been commenced. So that would go with any invoices that are dated prior to the application being approved would be considered something that's already, the purchases have already been made and the work has already been commenced. Another one is replacing existing infrastructure that's not eligible. So that would be another reason for a decline, or no clear drought mitigation strategy in that FBRP. The whole idea of, that it needs to be, there needs to be a correlation between the proposed works, drought preparedness, and that Farm Business Resilience Plan. So the other thing that I thought that would be really handy just to briefly touch on, we do have, we do have a number of them that of course have been approved, but a really good one and one of our earlier ones that did get approved was, a satisfactory Farm Business Resilience Plan was included, but it was for the purchase and installation of brand new 19-kilometre water pipeline to ensure reliable water in an area that was currently serviced by 5 seasonal dams, and the project was to supply water to around 1,000 head during a drought. So, it meant that they could spread the cattle out and improve the water quality at the end of the, I guess before the rains, and would allow stopping them to overgraze in certain areas. They'd be able to maintain consistent numbers in specific areas, maximise grass usage, and control the cattle numbers when needed if in drought. So that's kind of me. I'll be back for the Q&A session, and thanks so much for having me.
Great presentation, Cherie. Thank you very much. There's a lot to take in there, people. So we've got some excellent questions coming in. Thank you for those. Just for those of you that may have been popping those questions in the chat, we can't actually get in and moderate them through the chat. So if you could post them through the Q&A function. So where you see the request, the top ribbon on your screen, if you go across there to the right hand side, just before it says more and the 3 dots, you'll see a Q&A function there. Just click on that and then you'll get a little drop down on the side which will enable you to ask some questions. So, okay, moving right along. Just before we move into the Q&A session, I just thought I'd quickly, and before we move on to hear from Mark Collins, I just thought it'd be good to recap on a few things that we've already heard about through the course of the webinar today. Just hopefully it might shake out a few questions from people and clarify a few things. So essentially, in terms of drought preparedness, to be able to access assistance for drought preparedness, producers need to develop that Farm Business Resilience Plan. And there's 2 main forms of assistance there, the Farm Management Grant and the Drought Preparedness Grant. So that's drought preparedness, as I said. So once you're in drought, there's the 2 types of assistance there. One is the emergency drought assistance loans, up to $50,000, and a drought carry-on loan, up to 250K. And then when we move into drought recovery, there's the Drought Ready and Recovery Loan, another loan of up to 250K. So that covers off on those assistance measures. Okay. Just before we move into the Q&A session, I would like to introduce Mark Collins. Mark is from AgForce. So Mark is a beef producer and runs a family operation west of Mara. And I phoned him this morning to just to see if he was ready for the presentation. And as most of our farmers do, they're masters of their own destiny and try and do you know, as many things as they can within a day. Mark was up on a roof. So Mark holds various positions within AgForce, including the CQ Regional Council Vice President. He's the chair of AgForce Ag Business Committee, which, funnily enough, encompasses drought, climate, taxation, finance and transport. And he's also the AgForce representative on the NFF, Farm Business and Economics Committee. Mark is passionate advocate for good policy for AgForce members and the communities that they live and work in. Mark, thank you very much for joining us today, mate, and taking time out of your busy day. Over to you, mate.
Okay, thanks very much, Ted, and thanks to Emma Knight and the rest of the team for pulling this together today. It's a great body of work. I guess Drought Scheme's been around for a good many years, and as things progress in this space, and I think we've all seen a greater ramp up of the need to be, governments are more cognizant, I think, and a greater need to be more resilient in our businesses and to prepare more for drought. So this is a big body of work that industry's been involved with, not only AgForce but QFF and others. So yeah, the farm business resilience plans, whilst there will be some out there, this will be a new thing. I suggest you embrace it because banks and so forth are always wanting more information as we go along in this world, and it does help with your own planning on farm as well. So that's about it. I guess the other thing to be aware of is that it's a new space. The resilience, the term resilience and what it means, and so forth. It's nothing to be apprehensive about at all. The federal government in that space is very cognizant of the need for communities to be assisted at appropriate times, as is this current state government. So without any further ado, yeah, I'd like to open it up to questions.
Good on you, Mark. Thank you very much, Mark. So we've just got a couple of people that have joined late. Just for everyone's information, we're going to make the presentation available both through YouTube once we've done a little bit of editing and a little bit of polishing, I guess. But it will also be available to people who have registered for the webinar, be able to download the link and go into the presentation. There's a couple of questions around Jeff's presentation. We will make that available. That's my understanding. So, as I've said, the whole webinar today will be available. So if someone would actually like a copy of Jeff's PowerPoint presentation, I think that's come through from Greg. We'll make contact with you, Greg, and we can line that up for you, mate. So that's won't be a problem. Okay, just moving through some of the questions now. Thank you, Lindsay. To access the farm management grant, do we have to use someone from a list of suppliers to help with the farm resilience plan, Cherie?
There's no list, as long as you're receiving advice about preparing the farm business resilience plan. And it can, like I said, it can encompass any part of the farm business resilience plan. It's not designed to get somebody else to create the plan for you. It's about getting advice, and that's why, you know, it's not limited to just one advisor, and there is no list.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just make a contribution to that one as well, Ted? I thought it might be worth noting that a number of the farm business resilience projects have as part of their project activities, put together a list of consultants that have expertise in a range of areas that they're making available to participants in their industry. So depending on the industry, there may be some consultants that those projects are suggesting would be good people to utilise to get some advice. But yeah, it's not restrictive. It's just if you're interested in seeking advice from a consultant, some of those projects do have lists of consultants that they've identified as good people to provide expertise in a range of areas.
So, Jeff, while you've got the mic, mate, thank you for that. There's a question very similar to the one that was just asked. I've heard that the grant can only be used to source professional advice to assist in completing the Farm Business Resilience Plan. The funds cannot be used to engage a professional to complete the plan.
Yeah, so the emphasis on the advice to support development of the plan rather than completing the plan in entirety. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is the $50,000 per PIC property or business?
For the emergency, that would be per business.
So per ABN, essentially.
Yeah.
Cherie. Yep.
Yeah, I believe so. Now, these obviously are a work in progress. These are brand new. So, but at this stage, yes, it's per business.
Okay. Thank you. Keep the questions coming in, folks. Got some good ones here. Neil's asked a question. Are there any audit processes which follow up on the drought preparedness grants to document that the investment's gone into infrastructure as it was proposed to do?
Yes. So we basically pay the invoice. So we don't the money doesn't go into your account. We then we pay that.
So you have to incur the cost and submit the invoice. Yep. So would there be any follow-up on property auditing or anything like that? Do you know? Or
at this stage, I don't know. But I guess if an invoice is being paid for something that is to do with farm the preparedness grant and the co-contribution is there and the invoice has been presented, one would assume that is what is happening. So
okay.
Yeah.
Good on you. Thank you. A question, Dave, maybe for you, mate. If a producer is currently receiving the heavy vehicle registration concessions and fee waivers, does this transport benefit continue under the new assistance, or does it end if a region is no longer drought declared?
That assistance would end if a region is no longer drought declared because it relies on a drought declaration to get that heavy vehicle rebates. I'm unsure of the rules if they go onto the new scheme. Are they still able to access non-drought related drought assistance? I'm assuming so, but I can follow that up.
Thank you. For webinar participants, if there's any questions today, as we've said, this is a lot of new programs here, and if there are some of these questions that we aren't able to provide definitive responses on today, we're more than happy to go and seek the right advice and provide that at a later date for you as quickly as possible. Question for you, Cherie. Can you please clarify the loan eligibility criteria within SEQ and the Burnett Mare area? There are a lot of grazing businesses with off-farm income. So what's the limit of off-farm income?
So at this stage, there's no limit as such, but the whole program looks at, what that definition of a primary production is within this scheme, and it is that 50% of income is derived from that primary production entity, and 50% of more than 50% of the labour is spent on that. That doesn't mean that you can't have an off-farm income. Of course you can, but yeah, more than 50% needs to be derived from that primary production entity. It's kind of like that at this stage, that's what the qualifier is.
pretty much the same as what's in place now for DRAS, Dave.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Another question very similar to the one we had previously. Are there any checks and balances that any successful loan funds are spent on?
Similar answer.
Has been described on the FBR, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
similar answer. Obviously, with the emergency loan and the carry-on finance loan, because that's more about working capital. That's a different situation. But yeah, if it's on the FBRP, then that's what it should be done for the ready recovery loans, and obviously and for the grant as well.
Okay, thank you. How are we going for questions, folks? We've still got plenty of time up our sleeve if we've got a few questions. Folks, there's a few hands coming up. If you could just pop your questions into the Q&A function up the top there. Type those questions out, that'd be great. Just while we're waiting on a few other questions hopefully to come through. I'll just have a quick scroll through and make sure we've picked up on. Yep. So this is I think we touched on this previously. This is the first of a series of webinars that we're running this week. So over the course of the next 3 days, we'll run another series of webinars with the intensive livestock sector tomorrow. And then also cane growers, grain growers, broadacre farming, and then down to the horticulture sector as well. So that'll round us out until Friday. So we'll all be sick of the sound of our own voices by then. April, May, we're planning to roll out a series of forums in person, COVID permitting. Yeah, and we're hoping to touch on and visit a number of centres around Queensland to actually meet in person with people and run a very similar format to what we've run today. As we're just pulling those together now, so if we don't get to your questions today, or if you've got some information that you that you take home and digest, if you're like me, wake up in the middle of the night and think, geez, I wouldn't have minded asking that question. You could well get the opportunity, to attend a regional forum during April, May and ask that question. Certainly we'll have a lot of information there that we'll be able to hand out, and we'd love to have a chat to people in person. So as that information comes to hand, we get those events planned. We'll be putting out through our communications channels the locality of those events and the timing of those events. So keep watching. Have we got any other questions coming in? Doesn't look like it. Here we go. Okay, in terms of for any unusual scenarios for FBR plans, do we direct producers to Q Rider for clarification? The example used here is a producer purchasing grain silos for cottonseed for drought feeding. Cherie, are you comfortable on that one, or?
Yeah, so look, unusual scenarios for the plan. Obviously, Q-Rider aren't in a position to be able to assist people with their plans, because that would be a little bit of a conflict of interest, because we're looking at the plans and for want of a better term, judging the correlation between what they want to do and what they are proposing on doing. But for I guess to put forward hypothetical situations, then yeah, for sure. Bring it forward, ring your regional area manager, or put it forward in like specifics into us, and we can, I guess, spitball ideas and talk about things. Otherwise, if it's part of your farm business resilience plan, and that's what you want to do moving forward, then don't make it prescriptive. Make the farm business resilience plan the centerpiece of what you're doing. And if it just so happens that you can get a grant as part of, you know, what you're doing in that, then I guess it's the cherry on top rather than the goal. Just, yeah.
Thank you. We just had Michelle Finger raise her hand a few times, and I believe that she may have dropped out now. Oh no, Michelle, you're back. Michelle, if you've got a question, could you please just post that into the Q&A function? So up the top, the fourth button across. Obviously, Michelle looks like she's having some tech issues. Okay, how are we going with questions? So there's a new question there around how much detail and how long does the plan have to be? Is one small paragraph enough? No. The short answer is no. It's that age-old adage: crap in, no result. Essentially, you've got to take time. This is a serious and in-depth assessment that's being undertaken here. It needs to be given due care and attention. Needs to be a lot of thought go into it. Cherie, anything else?
Yeah, in addition to that, if you've got several stages to your plan too, include those. So, you know, like if you've got a really good example would be, you know, erecting a hay shed. If you've only got like, and you're doing it over, you know, 4 sections. If you've only got 1 section of that in your FBRP, and we think that that's inadequate for drought preparedness, then we're only going to look at that. But if you've got, you know, you've got 1 stage here, then 12 months you're doing another one until it's this humongous, amazing, you know, foolproof drought shed, then we can see that bigger picture. So I think that the more information you can put into that, the clearer what your plan is, then of course it's easier to you know, ascertain what's moving forward and put the correlation between what you're wanting to do and what your plan says you're going to do.
Yeah, good clarification. Thank you, Cherie. Next question here is, as with DRAS, do you and accessing assistance there, do you have to have owned your property for 12 months to access the new assistance?
I'll take that one again. So when you're looking at the emergency and the carry-on loans, then yes, it is. But when you're looking at everything else will be absolutely looked at a case-by-case situation. The good example that I was given was, you know, somebody that has purchased a farm in the last 6 months, and you know, it's a walk-on, ready to go, like a macadamia orchard. They're ready to go. They're good to go. They bought the whole thing, walk in, walk out kind of situation. They have plans for you know, drought mitigation. Then they could look at these measures, but of course an emergency or a carry-on finance would imply that you're already in drought, and that you know, you have to demonstrate that you have had financial hardship as a result of drought, and that would require 12 months.
Good on you, thank you. Another question. Was the Farm Business Resilience Program required to be complete? Well, it'll be the plan, sorry. Required to be completed from someone outside the business, e.g. finance director, financial controller, cannot complete it, but a consultant or an accountant could.
Yes, correct. It can't be somebody within it cannot be somebody within the business structure. It does have to be an external professional consultant. Thank
you. The next question is, if I wanted to drill a bore, is the Drought Preparedness Grant eligible for a dry or a test bore? I know that we've got quite a few of those, I think, from time to time, Dave, through the Emergency Water Infrastructure Scheme. So, yeah, Cherie, what are your thoughts on that?
look, drilling a bore would absolutely be because it's new.
Eligible.
Permanent. Yep, absolutely. Look, I would have to take this one on notice, honestly, but I guess we'd have to look at, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
It is a really good question. Look,
Yeah.
I'm going to take it on notice. No, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. This is why it's great, because coming back and having these questions is a fantastic thing to come back with. So I will have to, I'll be prepared for this one next time, but I'll have to take it on notice and get this one back to you if I could get somebody to grab those details.
That's great, thank you. Yep, go ahead, Jeffrey.
I can provide a brief response there because it was one of the test questions that we had developed for a previous webinar. So the scenario was, I'd like to drill a bore. Is the drought preparedness grant eligible for dry or test bores? So the response is no. The drought preparedness grant is only eligible for the drilling of working bores. Test or dry bores are not eligible for the assistance. So that was a frequently asked question that we developed previously for a webinar, if that assists.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I think it's worthwhile just checking in a bit more detail, Sherry, because no one sets out to drill a dry bore and it's pretty expensive, as we well know. Yeah, but anyway, for everyone online, we'll look into that in a bit more detail, but again, an excellent question. Okay. Any last minute questions at all, folks? There's been some great questions today, some good participation. We've got a little bit more time. Michelle, we might have to make contact with you after the webinar. Obviously, you've guys, if you've got some questions, just type them into the Q&A ribbon up the top, please, and they'll come through to us. Okay, I'll just give a couple more minutes while we're waiting for some more questions to come through. So there's we've got 3 people that obviously are having some issues, I think, with the Q&A function. We'll try and reach out to you after the webinar, if that's okay, and just see if we can answer the questions for you that you may have. Unless you can hear me and type them in to the questions now before we wrap up. Okay. Any more come through? Let me have a quick look. Okay. Yeah, another good question for you, Jeffrey. So it's around those acronyms, mate. So basically, you don't need to answer this, mate, I can. So the acronym, I think, that we utilise, FBRP, refers to the plan, doesn't it, Jeff? More than the program. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a constant source of confusion, though. FBRP could be either. So we try and avoid using the acronym as much as possible. And you'll notice I didn't put FBRP on any of the slides because it could be either the plan or the program. But in relation to that, there were a few comments about the quality of the plan previously. So I thought I might just comment briefly that I think it's good to, when you're doing your situation analysis, to look at what might be best practice. So we don't have an expectation that everyone is at best practice and that people are going to be on a continuum in relation to a range of areas. But what would be good is if the plans acknowledge what best practice is and have a plan to move towards best practice. So I think that might help answer some uncertainty in relation to what's required in the plan. Like one word answers or one paragraph, probably not going to cut it if you're talking about your production risks. We want to see people acknowledge what best practice is and some sort of plan for heading in that direction if they're not there already. The other point that I'd like to make is that the farm business program highly complements the drought reform package, but people can participate in the farm business resilience program and project activities irrespective of whether they're interested in applying for funding under the support package. So we're keen, and in terms of the grazing futures livestock business resilience program, people have the opportunity to work with the DAF extension officers, the NRM groups that are in partnership with the delivery of the program, as well as the rural financial counsellors. So it's putting together the resources of DAF in relation to a range of areas, together with the financial councils and the NRM groups in a pretty powerful partnership. So it gives the opportunity to deliver contextualised solutions and strategies for businesses using that holistic approach in the form of the Farm Business Resilience Plan. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity. So if people are interested in following up but not necessarily interested in the grants, we certainly welcome your participation in the farm business program activities. That'll be a wonderful thing.
Yeah, good additions, mate. Thank you very much. That's great. While you've been doing that, Jeff, there's another question that's come in. Is there a pre-approval process for activities an eligible business wants to do for the farm management grant so that people can spend the money with confidence of being approved a grant payment? Cherie, is that?
Yeah, so in the past, farm management grants have done a pre-approval situation. This one, we haven't looked at that, but that doesn't mean that it's not up for negotiation. So at this stage, no, but I can see what the availability for that is moving forward. But yeah, there's not.
Not currently.
No.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as we said, early days in terms of this program, everyone, and there'll be quite a bit of review happen to ensure the program remains fit for purpose. You know, there's a lot happening not only at a state level but a federal level as well. So we all want to be ensure that we're all on the same page, all working together in terms of this. So we'll certainly take on board your concerns, your comments, any positive aspects or whatever, and we'll feed them into the review process. Did you have something else, Cherie? You're good? No. Okay, here we're going for time. We're just about there. So I'll just make the offer. There are a few people that I think must have been trying to post some questions and couldn't utilise the Q&A function. If you would like to stay on at conclusion of the webinar, hopefully while we've got the presenters, if they don't have to run off, we might be able to answer those questions for